and out it goes. Well, look, so barbel goes in here as well. Now, of course, the size still has to fit more or less, but so far the sizes were, well, mixed. Down here, some around 2 kilograms, now here a bit mixed, and actually also some, well, under 1 kilogram. Maybe even exactly that. So it makes sense to go for barbel with natural baits. And above all, even more important, does it make sense to go for barbel with gold baits? When we look at the albino barbel, we see of course here completely only May beetles. May beetle larvae you can farm in the endgame with the shovel with a lot of luck, or you simply buy yourself a big bunch of them with gold. But I have to say I don't really see the point in that. So for such a simple fish like the barbel, to spend gold for a premium bait like the May beetle larvae, and bang, first albino barbel goes in here right now, and that completely normal on the cheese cube, and that one is really dirt cheap. So cheese cube, of course, is much cheaper. You can simply make it yourself. You get yourself such a giant block of cheese from Kuori from the dairy and turn it into cheese cubes. Cheese is of course a classic bait that again and again works really well for barbel. Still, you really have to say when I look at the barbel down here, they are all really nicely massive, or almost all really nicely massive, over 2 kilograms, and those were all the May beetle larvae. Still, for such a bait and for such a fish, that's actually not that big. The barbel has a trophy weight of 8 kilograms. And when I now use such a premium bait, and on average catch fish of the size of 2 kilograms, then of course that is still far away from 8 kilograms. And so really effective this whole thing does not seem to be. Still, it was relatively safe that almost only the barbel goes in here. That is of course already a huge advantage when you compare that now with other natural baits like for example earthworm, wheat grain, honey dough, and of course the cheese cube. Another possibility would be of course that you simply go in the direction of boilies and pellets. Boilies and pellets again are such an in-between thing between these super premium high-end baits that you get really rarely or only buy with gold, and the simple natural baits that you can already relatively easily make in the beginning area, like for example cheese. Here right now there was a barbel on honey dough, so that also works here every now and then. Only then we of course have to figure out the right flavors for boilies and pellets, and that is actually not so difficult. In most cases, the barbel also really likes to go on fishy flavors, mussel, crab, shrimp, caviar, so all those kinds of flavors that are more fishy, protein heavy, those work usually quite well on barbel. On top of that, there is a relatively narrow time window. That means we have a clearly better bite phase in the evening hours and a really good bite phase in the morning hours. So that means from 4 o'clock in the morning until about 10 o'clock in the morning, then it really takes off again with barbel. And then again, from about 16 o'clock until 23 o'clock, you have clearly higher chances on barbel. And on we go, and that's still with honey dough. And here I now change my setup. Well, because it is such a basic bait, such a simple bait, I go in here once again bigger. Completely exaggerated and normally way too big for this fish. Still, because the bait is so small or so basic, therefore an exaggeratedly big hook. And then let's try here if that works with this big hook also for barbel. Normally I fish for barbel with a size 1 hook. Here I am already going extra bigger with a size 2 hook. Still, of course, something like this also always goes in. Yes, and this bait combination, you should also know it, at least if you have already been at the Artuba and fished for short-headed barbel, because that of course also works here for the normal barbel, if the barbel just feels like it. So it is not quite as clear as with the short-headed barbel. There this bait combination always works again, but here too I like to test it. Somewhat smaller boilies and pellets, and then of course try here with these fishy flavors to go for barbel. Also, this bait combination can again and again work really well, especially in this combination here with mussel or mussel and fruit. It works regularly, always quite well for barbel fishing. Here, I now build once again a combination from shrimp and crayfish. And then we test this here once again. And if you think all the time, well, does he not use a feed mix? Then I can tell you, of course, he also uses a feed mix. That one is already in the water though. I have been standing here already a bit longer in testing, and therefore I already had to take it down again. But now in the direction of evening, I put it back on, and that is the original standard sturgeon feed mix. That's what it looks like. Let's look directly once again inside. So on rapeseed basis, zebra mussel inside, chopped worms inside, clay, krill, crab, and mussel as flavor. So this here is the original standard sturgeon feed mix that also regularly works well if you, for example, stand here with the earthworm and with the earthworm try to fish for barbel. Also with the earthworm, I could already catch several barbel trophies. That also worked. And especially when, for example, at the end of the year, new tasks come in. So a new end of year event, we often had in the last events the goal to catch a barbel. And that worked, especially with this combination of earthworm and the sturgeon feed mix, again and again really well. So, what do we have here? This is now just the first Boilie combination that I threw out. And here we now of course also have the chance for, yes, various other carp species, that is clear, but maybe also in the morning hours the barbel goes in here. So that is what it looks like now. Meanwhile, I have already caught here 2 common carp on the Boilie combination. So you can clearly see, without these gold baits, you get clearly more other fish with it. That is the advantage of these gold baits. You can go relatively targeted on this one fish because on these thick larvae, hardly any other fish bites. That is the huge advantage. Still, they are also baits that are very rare when you dig them up, or that you then exclusively buy in the shop with gold. Necessary, it is again not. Especially when you consider that only a few weeks ago, we stood right at this same spot, also clipped at 17 meters, and then simply with the corn with mussel flavor, caught big amounts of barbel trophies. Because such hotspot phases are several times per year active for the most different fish, that means there will again and again be a spot and again the chance for you here at Amber Lake to catch barbel. And with a bit of luck, of course, also the Albino Barbel. And there comes the next one out. Also, this is not a barbel. Yes, I keep testing this a bit further here with the different flavors. Theoretically, I should of course also put in green mussel corn. I can test that once again a bit later if one of these bait combinations does not work. But in the end, it works here at this spot. This classic spot, or one of the 3 classic spots here at Amber Lake. Again and again, quite well with barbel. But also at the other spots, the barbel is caught again and again. So just check in the playlist, where can you catch barbel here at Amber Lake, and above all, with which baits can you catch them? Testing, that is of course, as always, the alpha and omega. But barbel always with a feed mix. Always try with a feed mix, without feed mix. That means if you cannot yet make a feed mix for barbel, then don't even try to fish for barbel, because you will catch almost no barbel without a feed mix. So much for now about barbel fishing here at this water. I keep testing a bit more and then hope in time for clearly bigger barbel, and maybe then sometime indeed once again the Albino Barbel as trophy. That would of course be fantastic. If this helped, leave a like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, that helps me a lot. And then we will see each other in the next video. Until then, tight lines.